I'm Sarah Lawson, 32, and tonight I'm bracing myself to reunite with my distant family after 6 long years. They're coming together at El Etel, one of the swankiest spots in town, to toast my sister Emily's engagement. My folks always looked down on my career path, brushing off my love for cooking as unworthy of our family's prestige. They have no clue how much I've transformed since I cut ties. My nerves twist as I smooth out my sleek navy dress. Sometimes, the toughest reunions to face are the ones tied to your own history. Before I dive deeper into my tale, drop a comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from. If you've ever had to prove yourself to folks who should have had your back from day one, hit that like button and subscribe. Growing up in Westport, Massachusetts, carried a certain weight in my family. The Lawsons weren't just rich, we were practically royalty. My parents, Catherine and James Lawson, built their world around status symbols, the perfect address, elite schools, and high-flying careers. Our grand Victorian home was the backdrop for charity galas where Mom would show off us kids like prized trophies, her pride tied to how well we matched her definition of success. The Lawson kids are bound for brilliance, she'd boast at cocktail soirees, while Dad gave a nod of approval, sipping his bourbon. Emily's headed for Harvard Law, and Nathan's got a real knack for numbers. He's destined to dominate finance. When eyes turned to me, the middle kid, Mom's smile would falter just a touch. Sarah's got artistic leanings. She'll figure it out. What she really meant was that I was the family letdown. While Emily crushed it in mock trial and Nathan racked up math awards, I was happiest in the kitchen, our housekeeper Maria's realm. Maria, a kind soul from Italy, saw something in me my parents missed, raw passion. "You've got a gift for this," she'd say as I rolled out pasta dough or chopped herbs with precision. "The way you savor flavors, the way you sense them, it's in your bones." By 12, I was scribbling my own recipes. By 17, I was throwing secret dinner parties for friends when my parents were off on their trips. The kitchen was my haven, where I felt truly myself. Cooking for hired help, Dad snapped when I brought up culinary school in my senior year. Lawson's employ chefs, they don't become them. To keep the peace, I applied to business programs and ended up at Cornell, where Dad and Grandpa had studied. Even there, I fed my passion on the sly, sneaking in food chemistry classes and nutrition electives I could pass off as business-related. I ran an underground dining club in my dorm, charging classmates for bold 4-course meals to bankroll weekend cooking classes with local chefs. My secret life carried on through grad school. Halfway through an MBA that left me miserable, Chef Antoine Dubois, a French culinary legend with 2 Michelin stars, came to campus for a guest talk. After sampling my dishes at a school event I'd helped cater, he pulled me aside. "Who showed you how to craft a sauce like that?" he asked, his accent rich but his gaze intense. "I learned on my own," I confessed, piecing it together from cookbooks, online tutorials, and trial and error. He slipped me his card. "You're squandering your gift here. Come to my restaurant in Seattle. I'll help you shine." That moment flipped my world upside down. 2 weeks later, I stood in my parents' pristine parlor, explaining why I was ditching my MBA to chase culinary school. The silence after my words was heavy. "This is utterly unacceptable," Dad said, his voice low and sharp. "We've poured everything into your future. Everything but faith in what I truly want, I shot back. Mom's expression turned cold. If you chase this whim, you're on your own. No money, no support. Emily, back from her first year of law school, gave a sharp laugh, always the defiant one. Let's see how long you survive slaving away for pennies. Nathan, already climbing the ranks at a top investment firm, just looked mortified. I walked out that night with only my savings and a single duffel bag. The next 6 years were grueling like nothing I'd known. I worked 16-hour shifts, shared a cramped apartment with 4 roommates, and took out loans for culinary school. But under Chef Antoine's guidance, I came alive. The kitchen's heat, the precision, the artistry, it nourished a part of me business school never touched. Then came the break that changed it all. A venture capitalist who tried my dishes at one of Antoine's events pitched me a business idea. 3 years ago, El Edel opened with me as head chef and co-owner. A year later, I bought out my partners to take full control. It wasn't lost on me that my business degree came in handy, just not how my parents pictured. El Edel became the toughest table to book in the city. Just last month, Gourmet Today spotlighted us in their next wave of American dining feature. All this time, I kept my family at arm's length. Brief, awkward calls with Mom, the occasional birthday card, but nothing real. They knew I was doing something with food, but not the extent of my success. I chose to keep it that way. I wanted my achievements to stand on their own, not as a bid for their approval. So when a fancy invite to Emily's engagement party landed at my doorstep, I was stunned. Even wilder, it was set at my own restaurant. They couldn't possibly know it's mine. They likely picked it for its prestige, a perfect stage for their social clout. After wrestling with the decision, I chose to go. Not to win their praise, but maybe to finally turn the page. 6 years of distance gave me clarity. I'm grounded in my success now, ready to face their scrutiny without breaking. I hadn't expected the sting of hearing my family critique the dishes I'd poured my soul into crafting, right here in my own restaurant. But that's exactly what I faced as I stepped through El Edel's heavy oak doors that night, ready to play the part of the wayward daughter one last time. The familiar aroma of El Edel wrapped around me as I entered. Citrus zest, a hint of reduced Pinot Noir, and the faint fragrance of fresh thyme I insisted be delivered fresh every morning. Normally, that scent grounded me, a reminder of all I'd built from scratch. Tonight, it only tightened the knot in my chest. I'd chosen my outfit with care. A sleek navy sheath dress, a vintage Ralph Lauren piece, paired with a delicate silver necklace from my Grey Tance collection. It was refined yet understated, though my status-obsessed family would probably see it as a desperate attempt to look polished on a tight budget. I'd swept my hair into a tidy low bun, a choice they'd likely misjudge as me cutting corners on a proper salon visit. Lucas, my longest-serving waiter, caught sight of me right away. His brows lifted slightly, a silent question in his eyes. I rarely entered through the front as a guest. I gave him a quick head shake and mouthed, "Hold off." He nodded subtly and went back to his tasks. From the foyer, I could already spot my family. They'd claimed the prime center table, naturally, arranged like a portrait of wealth and privilege. Mom, draped in Prada, sat poised. Dad studied the wine list with exaggerated focus. Emily sparkled in what looked like fresh-off-the-runway Versace. Beside her was a man I didn't know, Ryan, I assumed. His hair neatly gelled, his flashy watch glinting with every gesture. Nathan and his wife, Lauren, rounded out the scene, both in sharp business suits, fresh from high-stakes meetings, no doubt. Sophie, my hostess, greeted me with a warm smile. "Good evening, Ms." She caught herself just in time. "Your group is already seated. May I escort you to their table?" "Thanks, Sophie," I said softly, grateful for her quick thinking. As we neared, Mom's eyes locked onto me first. Her gaze swept over me, that old familiar scan from my childhood, tallying up the worth of my outfit and deeming it lacking. "Sarah," she said, standing to brush air kisses near my cheeks. "You've made it at last. We were starting to worry." "I'm right on time, Mom," I replied, glancing at my watch. 7 sharp. Dad rose, offering a stiff hug that ended with an awkward shoulder pat. "You look well," he said, which in Lawson lingo meant I hadn't kept up the rail-thin figure our social circle idolized. Emily barely stood, tilting her cheek for a quick kiss. "This is Ryan," she said, as her fiancé stood and offered his hand. His handshake was overly firm, a classic power play I'd seen in too many boardrooms. "Stanford undergrad, Kellogg MBA," he declared. "Just landed senior associate at Morgan Stanley." "No, nice to meet you, or heard great things about you." Just titles and status, the Lawson family's native tongue. Nathan offered a warmer hello, though Lauren's smile seemed forced. I later found out she'd been the one tasked with booking this ultra-exclusive restaurant, anxious about whether it'd pass everyone's lofty standards. "Well," Mom said as I settled into the last open chair, "we've already ordered some sparkling wine. I trust that's fine with you." I noted they picked the third priciest bottle on the list, flashy but calculated, classic Lawson move. All around us, Elettle buzzed with the vibe I'd worked tirelessly to perfect. The lighting was soft, yet just bright enough to showcase the meticulous plating of every dish. The hum of chatter struck a perfect balance, intimate yet private. The tables were spaced precisely, close enough for energy, far enough for discretion. Every detail, from the crisp linens to the custom-crafted chairs designed for lingering comfort, bore my signature. I caught the subtle glances from my staff as they noticed me sitting as a guest. Elena, our sommelier, met my eyes as she approached with the sparkling wine. Her slight brow raise asked if I wanted her to acknowledge me. I gave a tiny head shake. "Wonderful selection," she said to Dad, presenting the bottle with smooth grace before pouring. "We're celebrating an engagement," Dad announced, a bit too loudly, fishing for VIP treatment. "Congratulations," Elena replied with polished warmth. "Elettle is thrilled to host such a milestone." "I'm surprised you snagged a table here," I said, feigning innocence. "I hear it's nearly impossible." Ryan leaned in with a smug grin. "I've got connections," he said with a wink that nearly made me cringe. "Pulled a string with a client who knows the owners." I bit back a retort. That client was probably Elena Martinez, a regular investor who sometimes booked tables for her colleagues. I made a mental note to have a word with her about Ryan. "How clever of you," I said, lifting my glass. "To Emily and Ryan," Dad toasted. "A flawless pair with a bright future ahead." We clinked glasses, and I took a small sip, nodding the wine was chilled to the exact temperature I drilled into my team. "So," Mom began, setting her glass down and pinning me with her gaze, "catch us up on what you've been doing these past few years. You've been so secretive." The table's attention swung to me, 6 pairs of eyes ready to dissect and judge. "I've been working in the culinary world," I said simply, "learning the ropes, growing." "Still stuck on that cooking thing," Emily sighed, as if I'd confessed to a bad habit. "I figured you'd have moved on to something more serious by now." "Not everyone's cut out for the corporate grind," Nathan chimed in, his attempt at support somehow sounding like a slight. Ryan looked puzzled. "What do you do exactly? Prep cook? Event catering?" "A bit of everything," I said, keeping it vague. "I've taken on all sorts of roles." "We're just glad you're getting by," Mom said with that practiced sweetness I knew too well. "But you know our door's always open if things get tough." I caught Mia, one of my veteran servers, approaching with the amuse-bouche, a tiny orb of compressed cucumber crowned with pickled ginger, and a sprig from a local micro-farm I'd partnered with. "Compliments of the kitchen," she said, setting one before each guest. Her eyes flicked to mine, a quick spark of loyalty before she slipped back into her role. "Is this it?" Emily asked, eyeing the small bite with a frown. "I'm starving." "It's an amuse-bouche," I explained. "Just a little something to wake up your palate." The dinner hadn't even properly kicked off yet. "I know what an amuse-bouche is, Sarah," Emily snapped, her voice sharp. "Just because I picked law over messing around with ingredients doesn't mean I'm clueless about culture." I watched as they sampled my creation. Mom nibbled the tiniest bite, always wary of extra calories. Dad shoveled the whole thing into his mouth, barely savoring it. Nathan and Lauren seemed to enjoy it, at least, while Ryan put on a dramatic show of dissecting the flavors, tossing out terms that made no sense in a kitchen. Emily, though, didn't even touch hers. "I don't eat fermented stuff," she announced. Never mind that the pickled ginger wasn't just thrown together. It was carefully crafted over weeks in a climate-controlled setup I'd spent years refining. As Mia cleared the plates, I caught the flicker of hurt in her eyes at Emily's untouched bite. In that moment, a fierce protectiveness surged through me, not for myself, but for my team who poured their hearts into our work. I'd built El to be more than a restaurant. It was a tight-knit crew, united by creativity and drive, not blood. The night was just getting started, but the old family dynamic was already creeping in. I was the odd one out, the one whose choices needed defending. But unlike the Sarah from 6 years ago, I now held a quiet confidence that would soon flip this whole scene upside down. "So tell us about the wedding plans," I said, steering the spotlight back to Emily as the first course arrived. A vibrant plate of heritage beets, artisanal burrata, and mint oil I'd spent months perfecting. Emily perked up instantly. "We've reserved Grace Cathedral naturally. The reception's at the Fairmont. 500 guests, though Mom thinks we should trim it to 400. "The list's getting out of hand," Mom cut in. "The Harper Joneses haven't spoken to the Caldwells since that awkward ski lodge fiasco, so we can't seat them near each other." I hid a grin. The way they treated these social chess moves like life or death never failed to amuse me. 500 sounds over the top, I offered, savoring a bite of the beet dish. Ryan leaned forward. "It's not just a party, it's strategy. Half those invites are about building connections." "Exactly," Dad agreed. Ryan gets the value of social leverage. A wedding like this opens doors. And you, Sarah? Emily asked, her voice suddenly cutting. Anyone special in your life, or are you still too wrapped up in your kitchen games? I noticed she'd barely poked at her food, nudging the beets around her plate with clear disinterest. I'm pouring my energy into work right now, I said plainly. Work, Nathan echoed with a soft chuckle. Is that what we're calling it? Sarah, sweetheart, Mom jumped in. Surely at 32 you're thinking about settling down. There's that nice son of Patricia Langley's. He's in healthcare management, very secure. I'm not interested in setups, Mom. Well, your choices narrow with every year, she pressed, especially given your circumstances. Before I could reply, Mia returned to clear the first course. I'd barely tasted my own dish, too wound up to enjoy it. Was something wrong with the plate? Mia asked Emily, eyeing her nearly untouched food. Too tangy, Emily said with a wave of her hand. And the beets could have been sweeter. I clenched my jaw. Those beets had been hand-picked at peak ripeness that morning from a small farm I'd partnered with exclusively. I'm so sorry to hear that, Mia said with smooth professionalism. I'll let the kitchen know. The second course arrived, pan-seared halibut with a hazelnut beurre blanc and foraged leeks, a seasonal dish I was especially proud of. As the plates were set down, I scanned my family's reactions. Now this looks like something, Dad said, slicing into the halibut. Ryan swirled his wine, a Chenin Blanc I'd chosen to complement this course. Solid wine list, not mind-blowing but decent. Elena, our sommelier, caught this as she passed by and shot me a quick look. I gave her a small smile. Elena had left a 2 Michelin star spot in Lyon to join me, turning down offers worldwide to be part of El Etoile. So, Sarah, Lauren started, clearly trying to loop me in. Nathan said you're in the food world, but you didn't say what you do exactly. Before I could answer, Emily cut in. She's probably waiting tables at some trendy spot, right, Sarah? Putting that business degree to use handing out specials. Actually, I began, but Dad interrupted. No shame in humble work, he said. Everyone starts somewhere, but after 6 years I'd expect a bit more progress. I've made progress, I said softly. Into what? Shift leader at Olive Garden. Emily smirked, pleased with her jab. Emily, Nathan said, a rare hint of reproach in his tone. What? I'm just being honest. She ditched her degree for some pipe dream. Choices have consequences. I sipped my wine, letting its crisp notes steady me. How's law going for you, Emily? Still at Carter and Wells? Her face tightened. I'm taking a break right now, actually, focusing on the wedding. She was working insane hours, Ryan jumped in. I told her my wife doesn't need to burn out at a firm. After we're married, she can do philanthropy like my mom. I caught a flicker anger, maybe frustration, in Emily's eyes before she masked it with a practiced smile. The third course arrived, handmade pappardelle with fresh fava beans, prosciutto, and tarragon, a signature dish that had been raved about in Gourmet today. These portions are tiny, Mom remarked, eyeing the elegantly plated pasta. All this hype for a few bites. It's about flavor, not volume, Mom, I said. The tasting menu's crafted to guide you through different tastes and textures. In my day, restaurants served a real meal for your money, Dad grumbled. This fancy small plate trend is just a scam to charge a fortune for scraps. I winced as Ryan sliced through his pappardelle instead of twirling it, snapping the delicate strands I'd carefully shaped by hand that morning. "So, how are you even affording a place like this on a cook's paycheck?" Emily asked bluntly. "This is one of the priciest spots in town." Every pair of eyes swung toward me. "I've been smart with my money," I said calmly. "Oh, come on," Emily scoffed. "A meal here costs more than you probably earn in a week. Got a rich boyfriend footing the bill." "I'm not seeing anyone," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "Then how can you possibly swing this place?" she pressed. "Are you drowning in debt, burning through credit cards to look like you belong here?" "Emily," Nathan cautioned, shifting uncomfortably. "No, I want answers," she insisted. "We all reshuffled our plans for this dinner she suggested at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Either she's being reckless with money, or she's hiding something about her life." The fourth course arrived, a flawlessly seared pheasant breast with a blackberry reduction and quinoa, executed perfectly by Chef Alina, who took charge of the kitchen when I wasn't on the line. "This pheasant's underdone," Ryan declared after a single bite. I glanced at his plate. The meat was a textbook medium rare, just as it should be. "It's cooked to the ideal temperature," I explained. "Medium rare brings out the best in pheasant." "I like my meat well done," he said, flagging down a server. When Mia approached, he spoke without meeting her eyes. "This is practically raw. Take it back and cook it right." I caught the quick spark of irritation in Mia's eyes, swiftly hidden behind her professional smile. "Of course, sir. My apologies," she said. As she took his plate, I gave her a subtle nod. She'd know to prepare a fresh breast rather than ruin the original by overcooking it. "Really, Sarah," Mom said once Mia left, "you still haven't answered Emily's question. How are you paying for this dinner?" The tension at the table was thick now. That old, familiar pressure tightened in my chest, the same suffocating feeling from countless family dinners growing up, cornered, judged, and dismissed before I could even speak. But I wasn't that uncertain girl anymore. I'd built something I was fiercely proud of, something entirely my own. For a split second, I thought about spilling everything right there, watching their faces shift as they realized whose restaurant they were dining in, whose dishes they'd been so quick to criticize. Before I could decide, Ryan's overcooked pheasant returned, now stripped of its juiciness and depth. "Much better," he said after a bite, though I could see the meat was dry and chewy from across the table. Dad gestured for the wine list again. "Let's get another bottle, something more impressive this time." As Alina approached with the leather-bound list, Dad made a performance of studying it, finally pointing to a $900 Chat Nouf du Pape. "This should do," he said confidently. I knew that wine inside and out. I'd picked it out during a trip to the Rhone Valley last spring, meeting the winemaker myself. It was exquisite but totally wrong for the courses still to come. "May I suggest a pairing that complements the upcoming dishes?" I offered. Dad brushed me off. "I think I can handle my wine choices, Sarah." Alina glanced at me, seeking guidance. I gave a small nod, letting Dad have his way. This wasn't worth the fight. As the night moved through the final savory course and into dessert, a reimagined citrus pavlova, one of my personal favorites, the digs kept coming. Every plate faced some nitpick, every comment I made twisted into proof of my shortcomings. By the time espresso arrived, I was emotionally spent. Enduring my family's condescension while watching them casually tear apart my life's work was almost too much to bear. Then came the moment I'd both dreaded and waited for, the check. Lucas approached with the sleek black folder, setting it discreetly in the table's center. Dad reached for it out of habit, but Ryan cut in. "Please, James, let me," he said with a polished tone that turned even generosity into a flex. "Consider it my gift for the occasion." Dad put up a brief protest before relenting. I watched as Ryan opened the folder, his confident smirk faltering into shock as he saw the total. "Something wrong?" Dad asked, catching the shift. No, Ryan said, quickly recovering. "Just double-checking the math." I knew exactly what he was seeing. A dinner for 7, with premium wine pairings, special requests, and that $900 Chateauneuf du Pape, easily topping $3,500. Not outrageous for El Edel's caliber, but definitely a statement. He pulled out his wallet, slowly drawing a platinum card, making sure everyone noticed its weight. Emily, picking up on his unease, chose that moment to circle back to her earlier grilling. "So, Sarah," she said, her voice laced with fake concern, "you still haven't explained how you're covering your share of this lavish dinner. We'd hate for you to overextend yourself for us." All eyes turned to me again, the old dynamic locking into place. Emily the golden child, me the perpetual letdown. "I can handle my part," I said simply. "Can you, though?" she pressed, leaning in. "We all know what kitchen jobs pay. Can you even afford a place like this?" The table went quiet, her words so pointedly cruel that even Mom and Dad looked uneasy. "Emily," Mom murmured, "maybe this isn't the time." "No, I want clarity," Emily pushed, her gaze fixed on mine. "We've spent all night acting like everything's fine, like Sarah's choice to throw away her education hasn't left her scraping by. We deserve the truth." Heat rose from my chest to my face. 6 years of building my own path, my own success, and nothing had changed. I was still the family failure, forced to defend my existence. Ryan, maybe sensing a chance to regain control after the bill's shock, chimed in. "If you need help with your share, just say it. No judgment." "I don't need help," I said, my voice taut. "Then how are you paying for this?" Emily demanded. "A meal here costs more than you probably make in a month." I opened my mouth to finally let it all out when Ryan frowned at the bill. "Hold on, there's a mistake here," he said. "They've only charged us for the drinks, not the food." He waved sharply for Lucas. "Excuse me," he said. "There's an error on our bill." Lucas approached with perfect timing, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. In truth, Lucas had probably been waiting nearby. My team knew me well enough to sense the tension brewing at this table. "Is there an issue, sir?" he asked Ryan, his tone polite but steady. "Yes, you've only billed us for the drinks, not the food," Ryan said, jabbing a finger at the check. Lucas glanced at the bill, then at me, his eyes searching for direction. In that instant, I decided enough was enough. The pretense had run its course. I gave Lucas a subtle nod. "There's no mistake, sir," he said smoothly. "The meal itself has been covered." "By who?" Dad asked, his brow furrowing. Lucas turned to me, his professional mask softening into a genuine grin. "Welcome back, Miss Sarah. Your usual spot is set for your investor meeting later. Shall I handle this first?" The table fell dead silent, 6 pairs of eyes staring at me, a mix of confusion and disbelief flickering across their faces. "Thank you, Lucas," I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through me. "Please close out Mr. Carter's drink tab. The rest is comped as always." "Of course, Miss Sarah," he replied, taking the folder from Ryan's now limp hand. "Chef Elena mentioned she'd love your thoughts on the new summer menu when you have a minute." "I'll swing by the kitchen before my meeting," I assured him. As Lucas walked away, I finally met my family's gazes head-on. Their expressions ranged from bewilderment to shock, with the first glimmers of realization dawning. What's going on?" Mom stammered, her voice faltering. I took a deep breath. The moment I'd both feared and quietly dreamed of for 6 years was here. "Welcome to El Etel," I said simply. "My restaurant." The silence stretched, heavy and endless. Dad recovered first, his face shifting from confusion to a calculating squint. "Your restaurant," he repeated slowly. "You work here." "No, Dad," I clarified, a strange calm washing over me. "I own El Etel. I'm the executive chef and sole proprietor." "That's absurd," Emily burst out. "This place is one of the hottest spots in the city. It's been in all the big magazines." "Exactly," I said. "Gourmet Today featured us last month. Eater raved about us before that. The Seattle Times gave us a glowing 4-star review last spring." Ryan stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. "But you said you were in food." "You kept it so vague." "Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me if you thought I was scraping by," I explained. "And you've all made that crystal clear tonight." Mom's hand drifted to her necklace, a nervous habit when she was thrown off balance socially. "Sweetheart, why wouldn't you share this success with us?" The way she stressed success said it all. My achievements only mattered now because they fit her definition of worth. "Want the whole story?" I asked, scanning the table without pausing for a reply. "When I left 6 years ago, I came to Seattle with just my savings," I continued. "I rented a cramped room in a Brooklyn walk-up with 4 roommates that first year. I juggled 3 jobs, prepping at a cafe from 4 a.m. to noon, cooking on the line at a downtown bistro from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., and pulling weekend shifts at a patisserie." I took a sip of water, noting their uneasy expressions. "I slept 3 hours a night. My hands were covered in cuts and burns. In my rare spare moments, I studied recipes and techniques obsessively. Chef Antoine, who first pushed me toward culinary arts, took me on as his protege. Within 2 years, I was his sous chef." Nathan watched me with what looked like real curiosity. Lauren seemed genuinely impressed. Mom and Dad sat frozen, as if recalibrating their entire view of me. 3 years ago, I was cooking at a private event at Antoine's restaurant," I went on. "A guest, Michael Grant from Grant Ventures, tried my signature dish and asked to meet the chef. He was stunned that someone so young had created what he called the most inventive plate he'd tasted in years." I gestured around us. "Michael became my first investor. This space was a shuttered dance club when we found it. I shaped the vision, crafted the menu, hired the team, and picked every detail from the chandeliers to the hand-glazed plates." "But the cost," Dad said, his mind still hung up on the numbers. "A place like this in this part of town, it must have taken millions." $4.2 million to start," I confirmed. "Michael brought in 2 other investors. We opened to rave reviews, thanks in part to Antoine's backing and industry ties. Within 8 months, we were in the black. 5 months later, I took out a loan to buy out my partners. I've been the sole owner for over a year now. That's why you suggested we meet here, Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. You knew all along. Actually, no, I corrected. Lauren picked this place. Right, Lauren. All eyes turned to Nathan's wife, who flushed deeply. I had no clue, Sarah, she stammered. The assistant at Nathan's firm said this was the most prestigious new spot in town. I swear I didn't know it was yours. Of course you didn't, I said, softening my tone. I made sure none of you knew that was my choice. Hide this from us, Mom pressed, her voice tinged with hurt. We're your family, we would have been so proud. A sharp chuckle slipped out before I could stop it. Would you, though, the same family who called cooking servant work, who cut me off when I chose culinary school, who, just moments ago, were tossing snide remarks about my choices. Dad cleared his throat, shifting in his seat. Now, Sarah, that's not fair. We were worried about your future, your security. That's my point, I cut in, my voice steady but firm. You couldn't value my passion on its own. It only matters to you now because it's wrapped in success and prestige. Just then, Chef Alina approached, her pristine whites emblazoned with Alina Martinez, chef de cuisine, cutting a striking figure. Sorry to interrupt, Sarah, she said, but the Takahashi group is here for their private tasting, and Nora needs confirmation for your magazine profile next week. Also, your editor called about the cookbook jacket design. I nodded. Thanks, Alina. Let them know I'll be there soon. As Alina walked away, I caught the stunned looks spreading across my family's faces. Cookbook, Emily echoed, her voice faint. Set to release this summer with Chronicle Books, I confirmed. 150 recipes woven with personal stories. Sarah, Mom started, her tone softening into that familiar coaxing lilt she used to smooth over awkward moments. This is extraordinary. Why keep it from us? We could have supported you, helped you. Supported me like you did when I needed it most, I asked quietly, by cutting me off completely. We thought it was a fleeting whim, Dad protested. How could we know you had this kind of business savvy? You've clearly got my knack for strategy. His attempt to claim credit for my work sparked a flicker of irritation. I built this on my own, I said firmly. Without your network, your money, or your backing. Ryan, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly piped up, his earlier critiques conveniently forgotten. A cookbook deal, that's got to come with a hefty advance. And this place, he gestured around, must pull in serious revenue. Any plans to scale up, maybe a chain. I've got contacts in hospitality investment who'd love to talk. I couldn't help but laugh at how quickly he'd flipped from condescension to opportunism. I'm good with my current advisors, thanks, I said, brushing him off. Emily shot him a glare before turning to me. So, all this time, while I thought you were barely getting by, you were thriving, building all this. Exactly, I said simply. And tonight, she went on, her tone sharpening, you let us sit here, picking apart your dishes, your wine, your portion sizes, knowing it was all yours. I wanted to see how you'd treat me if you thought I was still the family screw-up, I explained. And now I've seen it. That feels manipulative, she snapped, though the flush in her cheeks betrayed her embarrassment. More manipulative than grilling me about how I could afford to eat here. Suggesting I must be in debt or mooching off some rich guy, I countered. You weren't worried about me, Emily. You were basking in what you thought was your edge over me. The restaurant had quieted as we spoke, the dinner rush winding down. Alina approached with a bottle. "Your private reserve brandy, Miss Sarah," she said, "for your investor meeting. And Chef Alina says the kitchen's ready when you are." "Thanks, Alina," I replied. "Tell her I'll be there in 10. As she left, I turned back to my shell-shocked family. "I've got a business to run," I said, standing up. "Thanks for coming tonight." "Sarah, hold on," Mom said quickly, her voice urgent. "Don't leave it like this. We should celebrate what you've done. How about brunch this Sunday? We can catch up properly." I looked at her, seeing not the towering figure of my childhood, but a woman scrambling to save face. "I'll consider it," I said. "But right now, I've got investors waiting and a kitchen to check on." As I turned to go, Nathan stood. "Sarah," he said, his voice softer than the rest. "This is incredible. What you've built. It's amazing. I'm sorry I didn't have your back sooner." His words felt like the only genuine ones I'd heard all night. I gave him a small nod before walking away from the table, where I'd just rewritten my family's view of me forever. I'd barely taken a dozen steps when I heard the quick tap of heels behind me. Turning, I saw Mom hurrying to catch up, her polished composure starting to crack. "Sarah, please," she said, lowering her voice. "You can't just drop this bombshell and walk off. We need to talk about this." I glanced toward the private dining room where my investors, here to discuss funding for my next restaurant concept, were waiting. "I've got a meeting, Mom," I said. "Cancel it," she urged. "This is family." "Family hasn't been your priority for 6 years, I replied, keeping my tone even. "My business doesn't suddenly take a backseat just because you've decided my work is worth your approval." The rest of the family had trailed her, forming an awkward huddle near the bar. Dad looked out of place, unaccustomed to not calling the shots. Emily's face flickered between resentment and what might have been a grudging respect. "Maybe we can talk more tomorrow," Dad suggested, slipping into his boardroom problem-solving tone. "Dinner at our house. We've got a lot to discuss," Ryan added eagerly. "My firm could help you expand." "I don't need your help," I cut him off firmly. "I didn't build this place to finally earn your validation. I built it because it's what I love, what I'm damn good at. My success doesn't suddenly make my passion more legitimate than it was 6 years ago," I said firmly. "No one's saying that, sweetheart," Mom backtracked, her voice softening. "We're just so proud of what you've achieved." "Are you proud, Mom?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or are you just relieved my choices no longer make you cringe at your social gatherings?" Her slight wince told me I'd struck a nerve. "That's not fair, Sarah," Dad interjected, his tone defensive. "We've always wanted what's best for you." "No," I corrected, holding his gaze. "You wanted what fit your idea of my future. There's a difference." Chef Alina appeared beside me, her steady presence a quiet comfort. "The Nakamura group is asking if you'll join them soon," she said under her breath. 5 minutes, I promised her. As Alina stepped away with a nod, I turned back to my family. "I've got to go." Emily stepped forward, her usual sharp edge softened. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. What I said tonight was harsh." "It was honest," I replied. "That's the one upside of this evening. I saw exactly how you all see me when you think I'm struggling." "That's not fair," Nathan chimed in, his voice earnest. "We judge based on what we know. We didn't have the full picture." "You didn't know I was successful," I clarified. But you also didn't know I was chasing something I loved. That should have been enough for my family to show me basic respect. A heavy quiet settled over the group. "You're right," Dad said finally, catching me off guard. "We should have backed your passion, no matter the outcome." Coming from James Lawson, who rarely admitted fault, those words carried weight. "Where do we go from here?" Mom asked, her voice tinged with rare vulnerability. I took a deep breath, weighing her question. Despite the pain they'd caused, they were still my family. The wounds were real, but so were our shared memories. Late-night giggles as kids, comforting each other through first heartaches, silly inside jokes no one else got. "I'm not sure yet," I said honestly. "But one thing's clear. If we're going to have any kind of relationship moving forward, it has to be different. I'm not the family let down begging for approval. I'm a chef and business owner who deserves the same respect you'd give any professional." "Absolutely," Dad agreed quickly. "And that means no more snide remarks about my choices, no unsolicited career tips, and definitely no trying to use my restaurant for your networking," I added, shooting a pointed look at Ryan, who looked suitably chastened. "About Emily's wedding," Mom began cautiously. "What about it?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "We'd love for you to be there," Emily said, her voice softer now. "As my sister, not as whatever we thought you were before tonight." I studied her, searching past years of rivalry and judgment. There had been good moments, too, shared secrets, stolen glances during family dramas, laughter over things only we understood. "I'll be there," I promised. Then, after a pause, I added, "And if you'd like, I can host a dinner for the wedding party here at El Etel. My gift to you." Emily's eyes widened. "You do that after how we've treated you." "You're still my sister," I said simply. "But let's be clear, this isn't about winning your approval. It's me sharing something I'm proud of on my terms." "I get it," she said quietly, a genuine smile breaking through, the first real one all night. "And I'd be honored." "I really need to go now," I said, nodding toward the private dining room. "Of course," Dad said with a nod. "Your business comes first." "Not always," I corrected, "but tonight it does." As they gathered their coats to leave, I added, "I'm free for brunch this Sunday. Not at your country club, though. There's a cozy spot in Capitol Hill I think you'd like." "We'll be there," Mom promised, relief flickering in her eyes at this small olive branch. I watched them leave El Etel, their view of me forever altered. As the door swung shut, I let out a long breath, feeling strangely unburdened. Elena approached again. "Everything all right?" "Getting there," I said with a small smile. "Family's messy." "You're preaching to the choir," she laughed. "My mom still tells people I work at a diner, like I'm slinging hash at a greasy spoon." I grinned, grateful for her camaraderie. "Let's go brainstorm that summer menu. I've got some new ideas I'm itching to try." As we headed toward the kitchen, my refuge, my triumph, my true home, I realized the night's biggest revelation wasn't proving my worth to my family. It was owning it myself. I'd built this life on my own terms, regardless of their approval. And that truth was worth more than any validation they could ever give. 2 weeks flew by in a blur. Planning the summer menu, hashing out cookbook layouts with my publisher, and exploring early talks for a second restaurant kept me gratefully occupied. But in quiet moments, thoughts of that family dinner lingered, nudging me to reflect. The Sunday brunch had gone better than I'd expected. I'd brought my family to Nora's. a quirky little spot run by an old friend from my early days on the line. Mom and Dad were visibly thrown by the eclectic tables and mural-covered walls at first, but the food, simple yet expertly crafted, won them over. "I had no idea eggs could taste this good," Dad admitted, sopping up the last of his harissa-spiced frittata with fresh-baked focaccia. Small progress, not a total shift, but a crack in the wall. Now, settled at my usual table after closing, I watched my team wrap up their tasks. Mia was tallying the register, humming a soft tune. Lucas and Alina were debating wine pairings for tomorrow's private party. Alina had left an hour ago after we'd locked in the summer menu updates. My phone pinged with a text from Emily, wedding planning chaos. Florist just hiked their price. Coffee tomorrow? Need your no-nonsense take. I smiled faintly at her unexpected trust in my perspective, a tiny step forward. I replied, confirming a time and place. My relationship with my family was shifting into something I hadn't foreseen. Not the warm, all-in embrace I might have once yearned for, but something more grounded. A cautious respect between adults with different lives and values. Mom had called 4 times in 2 weeks, her usual stiffness giving way to real curiosity about my work. Dad sent me a link to an article about women chefs redefining the industry, a quiet nod that he was trying to get my world. Even Nathan reached out, asking if he could bring his kids to see the kitchen someday. "I want them to know success can look different for everyone," he'd said. These were tentative beginnings, not some grand movie-style reunion. Real healing, I was learning, comes in soft moments and small acts, in the slow unraveling of old habits. The biggest shift, though, wasn't in how my family saw me. It was in how I'd stopped gauging my worth through their lens. The approval I once craved from them now felt almost irrelevant. I'd proven myself not to them, but to myself. That clarity had spilled into other parts of my life. I'd started a mentorship program for young chefs from tough backgrounds, giving them the support and chances I'd fought for. Every Sunday morning, El Edel's kitchen became a classroom for 10 aspiring cooks who reminded me of my younger self. Driven, passionate, just needing someone to believe in them. One of them, Leela, showed such talent that I'd offered her an apprenticeship. Watching her confidence bloom with every new technique she nailed brought a joy no industry award could match. "Chef," Mia's voice broke through my thoughts. "We're all set to close. Anything else you need?" "No, thanks," I smiled. "You all killed it tonight." As my team filed out, calling their good nights, I stayed at my table, notebook open to a blank page. I'd been wrestling with the introduction for my cookbook, struggling to pin down words that captured my path. In the stillness of the empty restaurant, the words finally came. I began to write. Food has always been my deepest form of expression. When words fell short, I spoke through flavors. When the road ahead felt uncertain, I trusted my senses. The recipes in this book are more than dishes. They're pieces of a life built on authenticity over approval. 6 years ago, I faced a choice between others' expectations and my own heart. Choosing the latter came at a steep cost, but it led to a richness I never could have dreamed of, not just in professional triumphs, but in the realization that true value lies not in external praise or wealth, but in the courage to follow your own truth, even when it's a quiet whisper against a chorus of doubt. I set down my pen, the words flowing freely at last. Tomorrow would bring new hurdles, a tricky supplier meeting, Emily's wedding drama, finalizing the cookbook intro. But tonight, in this pocket of calm, I felt a deep sense of peace. The path hadn't been easy. Nights so exhausting I dozed off in pantry corners during rare breaks, scars on my hands from burns and cuts, moments of doubt so heavy I'd questioned everything. But I'd kept going, not to prove myself to others, but because this was the only life I could imagine. By choosing my truth over approval, I'd found something more precious than success or family validation. I'd found myself. Have you ever had to choose between meeting others, expectations, and following your own path? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated, give it a like, subscribe for more tales of grit and triumph, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that the truest success comes from within. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and always remember, the most meaningful victories are measured not by others' standards, but by the joy and purpose you find on your own road.